My name is Callista Varelli, and the exact moment my life shattered was the moment I was supposed to say, I do. You know that feeling when everything finally looks perfect? The dress, the venue, the man standing in front of you. And then, something small shifts. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. If you've ever had a moment where your instincts whispered something wasn't right, stay with me. And before we go further, if stories like this pull you in, take a second, like the video, and subscribe. And I always wonder this, where are you listening from right now? Late night? Different country? Quiet room? Drop it in the comments. It's crazy how stories connect people who've never met. Now, let me take you to that morning. The wedding was set at Ivory Ridge Estate, Napa Valley. Soft sunlight, rolling vineyards, white roses everywhere. It looked like something out of a dream. Everyone said I was lucky. Rhett Calderon stood at the altar waiting for me. Tailored suit, calm smile, perfect posture. He looked like a man who had everything under control. And for a long time, I believed he did. We met 2 years ago at a private investor event in San Francisco. He wasn't the loudest in the room. He didn't need to be. People listened when he spoke. That kind of quiet power, it pulls you in. He noticed me that night, walked over, introduced himself like it was inevitable. Callista, he said, like he already knew my name mattered. And from that moment, everything moved fast. Trips, dinners, conversations that lasted until sunrise. He made me feel seen. And that's dangerous, because when someone learns exactly how to see you, they also learn how to control what you don't see. Ready? My sister Noemi Varelli whispered, adjusting my veil. I nodded, but something in my chest felt tight. Just nerves, she smiled. That's what everyone says. I stepped forward. Music began. Soft, elegant, perfect. Every eye turned towards me. And there he was, Rhett, waiting, smiling, like nothing in the world could go wrong. I walked slowly down the aisle, each step measured, controlled, because that's what you do when your whole life is about to change. You don't run, you don't hesitate, you commit. When I reached him, he took my hands. They were warm, steady. Too steady. You look perfect, he whispered. Perfect. I smiled slightly, because something about the word didn't sit right anymore. The officiant began speaking, words about love, commitment, forever. But I wasn't listening, because for some reason my mind kept replaying something. A moment from 3 nights ago. Rhett on the phone, voice low, tone different. I hadn't heard the full conversation, just one sentence. She doesn't know anything. At the time, I ignored it, because love makes you dismiss things you shouldn't. Callista? I snapped back. The officiant was looking at me. It was time. Time to say the words. Forever. I took a breath, looked at Rhett, and for a split second, I didn't recognize him. Not fully, like something was hidden just beneath the surface. Do you... Stop! The voice cut through the air, sharp, loud, uninvited. Everything froze. Every head turned, and there, standing at the back, was a man I had never seen before. Tall, disheveled, breathing like he had run to get here, and his eyes locked on me. Not Rhett. Me. "You can't marry him," he said. Silence. Heavy. Confused. "What is this?" Rhett snapped, stepping forward. But the man didn't look at him. Not once. "Callista," he said again, voice shaking slightly. "You don't know who he really is." And just like that, the perfect wedding started to fall apart. The moment that man's voice cut through the ceremony, it didn't just interrupt the wedding, it cracked something invisible that had been holding everything together, and suddenly the air felt heavier, like every single person sitting there realized at the exact same time that whatever was about to happen next was not part of the plan, and definitely not something you could politely recover from with a smile and a toast later. I remember my fingers tightening slightly around Rhett's hand, not out of comfort, but instinct, like my body was trying to hold on to something stable, while my mind struggled to process what was unfolding right in front of me. Because this wasn't just a random interruption, this wasn't someone drunk or confused, there was something in that man's voice, something raw and urgent that didn't feel fake, didn't feel rehearsed. It felt like truth forcing its way into a place where it wasn't welcome. Rhett let go of my hand first, and that was the moment I noticed the shift in him. Not the calm, composed man everyone admired, but something sharper, something irritated, almost threatened, and he stepped forward with that controlled anger people use when they're trying very hard not to lose control in front of others. His jaw tightening as he said, "You need to leave, right now," in a tone that wasn't loud but carried authority, the kind that expected obedience without question. But the man didn't move, and that alone changed everything, because people like Rhett are used to being listened to. They're used to rooms adjusting around them, bending slightly to their presence, and when that doesn't happen, when someone stands still instead of stepping back, it creates tension that spreads fast, like a ripple you can't stop once it begins. "Callista," the man said again, and this time my name didn't feel like a normal word. It felt personal, like he knew something about me, something specific, and I found myself taking a small step forward before I even realized I was moving, my voice quieter than I expected when I asked, "Who are you?" Because that question wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was the beginning of something deeper, something I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. "My name is Elias Vorn," he said, his breathing uneven but his gaze steady, and there was something about the way he said it, like he wasn't introducing himself for the first time, but reminding me of something I should already know, something just out of reach in my memory, and that unsettled me more than anything else happening around us. Rhett's voice came sharper this time, cutting in before Elias could say anything more. "Security," he called out without even turning his head, because of course there was security, of course everything had been planned down to the smallest detail, and yet somehow this moment had slipped through all of that perfection, like a flaw in glass you only notice when it's already too late. But before anyone could step in, Elias spoke again, and this time his words landed with a precision that made my chest tighten. "Ask him about Crestfall Holdings," he said, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly enough that I heard every syllable. And the moment I turned to look at Rhett, really look at him, I saw it, just for a second, a flicker, something that didn't belong in his usual controlled expression, something that looked dangerously close to fear. It was subtle, almost invisible, but once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. And suddenly, that memory from 3 nights ago came rushing back, stronger, clearer. The way his voice had dropped when he thought I wasn't listening. The way he had said, "She doesn't know anything." And now, standing here, in front of everyone, I realized I wasn't imagining things. I hadn't misheard. I had ignored it. And ignoring something doesn't make it disappear, it just gives it time to grow. "What is Crestfall Holdings?" I asked, my voice steadier now, because something inside me had shifted from confusion to focus, and Rhett didn't answer immediately, which in itself was an answer, because he always had answers, always knew exactly what to say, how to say it, and when. When someone like that hesitates, even for a second, it means the truth isn't convenient. "It's nothing," he said, dismissively, too quick, too clean, like he was trying to sweep the question away before it had a chance to settle. But Elias shook his head slightly, almost like he expected that response, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. "It's not nothing," Elias said, his voice calmer now, more controlled, which somehow made it more believable, more dangerous. "It's everything he didn't tell you," and I could feel the attention of the entire crowd shifting again, no longer confused but engaged, because people are drawn to cracks in perfection. They want to see what's underneath. I looked at Rhett again, searching for something familiar, something reassuring, but all I saw was calculation, like he was already trying to figure out how to control the situation, how to minimize damage, how to get things back on track, and that realization hit harder than anything Elias had said so far, because this wasn't just a misunderstanding, this was something planned, something hidden. "Callista, don't do this here," Rhett said quietly, stepping closer to me, lowering his voice just enough that it felt private even though everyone was watching. "Whatever he's saying, it's not real." And for a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe him, because believing him would make everything simple again. It would restore the version of reality I had been living in up until now. But then Elias said one more thing, and it changed everything completely. "Your company," he said, looking directly at me, "Virelli Analytics, it didn't collapse, it was taken, and the world didn't just stop, it tilted, because that wasn't public information, that wasn't something anyone outside a very small circle would know, and suddenly the past I had buried, the failure I had accepted, the story I had been told about my own life, started to feel incomplete." Rhett's grip on my arm tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to anchor me, enough to try and pull me back into his version of reality, and that was the moment I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. That control doesn't always look like force. Sometimes it looks like guidance, like protection, like someone making decisions for you for your own good, until one day you realize you haven't made a real decision in a long time. "Let go," I said quietly, and when he didn't immediately release my arm, I repeated it, this time with enough firmness that he had no choice but to step back, and that small distance between us felt larger than the entire space we were standing in. I turned back to Elias, my heart racing now, but my mind clearer than it had been all day, all week, maybe even all year, and I asked the question that mattered more than anything else at that moment. "What are you saying?" And he looked at me, not with urgency this time, but with something steadier, something almost patient, like he had been waiting a long time for me to ask that exact question. "I'm saying," he replied slowly, "you're not marrying the man you think you are." And in that moment, standing there in a dress that suddenly felt too heavy, in a place that no longer felt like mine, surrounded by people who were no longer just guests but witnesses, I realized that whatever happened next wasn't going to be a simple explanation. It wasn't going to be something you could fix with a conversation or ignore with time. It was going to change everything. For a few seconds, nobody moved, nobody spoke, and it felt like the entire world was waiting for me to decide what to do next, because somehow, without anyone saying it out loud, everything had shifted, and this was no longer just a wedding, it was a moment of truth. I slowly turned back to Rhett. His expression had changed. That calm confidence he always carried so effortlessly was gone. In its place, there was tension, calculation, and something else, pressure. "Say something," I said, quietly but clearly enough for him to hear. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to stay composed. "Callista, this is not the place for this. He's trying to confuse you." "Then clear it," I replied. Simple, direct, no escape. For the first time since I had known him, Rhett didn't immediately take control of the situation, and that silence said more than any explanation could. Behind me, I could feel everyone watching, listening, waiting, and I realized something in that moment that changed everything inside me. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't scared. I was done being the person who ignored her instincts just to keep things perfect. "Tell me about Crestfall Holdings," I said. His jaw tightened. "It's just a company," he replied. Elias let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. "Yeah, a company that quietly acquired Varelli Analytics through shell entities and buried it under legal layers so deep no one would trace it back." My heart skipped, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. Slowly, painfully, everything began connecting. "My company didn't fail," I whispered. Elias shook his head. "No, it was taken, strategically, piece by piece." I looked at Rhett again, searching his face for denial, for anger, for anything that proved this was a lie. But he didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that hit harder than the truth itself. "You wouldn't have been able to save it anyway." That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke and rebuilt at the same time. "You took it?" I asked, my voice no longer shaking. It was business," he said flatly. "No," I said, stepping back slightly, creating space between us. "It wasn't. I was rebuilding it." He shook his head, almost impatient. "You were emotional about it. I made the logical move." Logical. The word echoed in my mind. "So you destroyed something I built, then stayed with me?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. He didn't need to, because now I understood. Control, access, position. It wasn't love, it was strategy. "You knew who I was from the beginning," I said slowly. "Yes," he replied. No hesitation, no guilt, just truth. And somehow that hurt less than the lies. Elias stepped closer, his voice calmer now. "He didn't just take your company. He used it, expanded it. It's now part of Crestfall's core portfolio." I let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "So everything I thought I lost," I said, looking at Rhett, "you've been building on it?" He held my gaze. "I improved it." That arrogance, that certainty, that belief that he had done nothing wrong. And suddenly I felt something unexpected, not sadness, not anger, power. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was seeing clearly. "You really think I'm nothing without you?" I asked. He didn't respond immediately, but his silence was enough. I nodded slowly. Then I did something no one in that room expected. I smiled, not out of happiness, but clarity. "You made one mistake," I said calmly. Rhett frowned slightly. "What mistake?" "I wasn't knowing how to rebuild." The room went completely silent again, and this time I was the one in control. "You took my company," I continued, my voice steady, confident, "but you never understood what made it valuable." Elias watched me carefully now. Rhett, too. You think it was the structure? The assets? The data? I shook my head slightly. No, it was me. Rhett's expression hardened. You're overestimating yourself. I smiled slightly again. Am I? I reached into the small clutch I was holding, pulled out my phone, and unlocked it. 3 months ago, I said calmly, I started something new. Rhett didn't react. Not yet. Different name, different structure, different investors. Now his eyes narrowed slightly. But same vision, I added. Elias's expression shifted. Interest, recognition. What did you call it? I looked at him briefly, then back at Rhett. Novarin Systems. And that's when it happened. That subtle shift. That moment where Rhett realized this wasn't just emotion, this was strategy. You're lying, he said. No, I replied simply. Then I turned the phone toward him and showed him. Numbers, growth charts, partnership confirmations, signed deals. Everything, and for the first time since I had known him, Rhett looked unsettled. Impossible, he muttered. No, I said again, just unexpected. The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were silent, watching, because now the story had changed. This wasn't a ruined wedding. This was a reversal. You built this without me? He asked. I tilted my head slightly. Exactly. That hit him hard, because control had always been his advantage, and now it was gone. I took a step back, adjusted my dress slightly, and looked around, at the guests, at the setting, at the life that almost happened, then back at him. I'm not saying I do today, I said calmly. No hesitation, no regret, just decision. You're making a mistake, he said. I smiled slightly. No, I replied softly. I'm correcting one. I turned away from him, and this time I didn't look back. Elias stepped aside, letting me pass, and as I walked forward, away from the altar, away from everything that had been built on half-truths and control, I felt lighter. Not because things were easy, but because they were finally real. And before you go, I want to ask you something, because stories like this aren't just stories. They make you think, they make you feel, they make you question. So tell me honestly, if you found out the person you trusted most had built their success on something they took from you, what would you do? Would you walk away, or would you take everything back? And also, I'm really curious, where are you listening to this from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I read them all.